Let's get to it, people. Venerable Rafael Cordero y Molina, on his way to sainthood, kind of an American. It's kind of like Junipero Serra. I have to kind of shoehorn him in, but as you'll find out in a moment, born in San Juan, Puerto Rico in 1790. 17. I did not turn this on. I turned it off. Yes. 1790 and died in 1868. So he wasn't, I mean, from Puerto Rico, but Puerto Rico was not at the time. I don't even think we controlled Puerto Rico at the time. Puerto Rico is a commonwealth, a territory in association with the United States, but it's self-governing. However, around 1917, as I found out from one of my students earlier, 1917, the government granted citizenship to those born in Puerto Rico. Before then, I guess it was just like a colony. People were not American citizens, but after that, they now are. So even though he wasn't born or he wasn't alive during that time, well, eventually Puerto Ricans were given American citizenship. So this, that, and the other. I'll consider him an American since Puerto Ricans are considered Americans today, even though he would not have been back then. And I don't think we had taken Puerto Rico or we were occupying Puerto Rico at the time. It was still part of Spain, Spanish Empire. When he was born there, of mixed race, African, and it says Puerto Rican. I'm going to assume that means Hispanic, I'm assuming. Could be also Native American. From the people, Native Americans who were living on Puerto Rico at the time, before the Spaniards came. Nevertheless, mixed race. And he's known as the father of public education in Puerto Rico because he founded a free school for the children of San Juan, open to everybody, regardless of what race they had or social standing, which was interesting because, at that time, racial things being the way they were, slavery was a reality in the Spanish Empire at that time. Educating people who were not educating people, non-white people, was dangerous. It wasn't high on the to-do list for a lot of people, at least the rulers, the people in charge, and also the poor people as well. So it wasn't. So he was doing addressing a need, but he was also doing something that was, I guess you could say, countercultural. Because, as I said, slavery was still an issue in the Spanish Empire, and normally you didn't want to teach slaves to read and write. Give them an education, because that might get them thinking about other things, that you don't want them thinking about. You want them to just stay where they are, stay in their position. That's also kind of dangerous. And he was an opponent, as you can imagine, of slavery, which eventually was outlawed in the Spanish Empire. I forget when. I think during his lifetime, though. But at his school, this guy who's the father of public education, but the guy was self-taught. He taught himself everything. He was not himself educated formally, but at his school that he founded, he taught reading and writing, calligraphy, which is like penmanship, how to write your letters and stuff. He taught math, and given that he's venerable, he was a religiously oriented person, a holy man. So he gave instruction in the Catholic faith to the children as well. So a good and holy man. And in 2013, he was recognized as honorable, venerable by Pope Francis, the late Pope Francis. And so he's on his way. And I ask for Venerable Raphael's prayers for us that we will do as he was a teacher. Pray for me as a teacher, that I have a burden to bear. 25 of them. but also I want pray for our students here that they do well, Venerable Raphael. You think this information is going to show up on a quiz? Miss Jasmine, what do you think? Think it, yeah, it might. What do you get the stock report? I got to make my own fun, Mr. Melendez. Where are we? Religion and violence. More religion or more violence? Oh, da, da, da. Where are we? We're still talking about religion. And we'll be talking about it for a little bit longer. I want to nail it down. Yeah. Whatever. There we go. Should we do these things? The ultimate reality, transcendence, the sacred, the profane. Okay. We had some violence in the news recently. Does anyone know what? What context? Huh? Gun violence? Well, this is America, sir. That goes without saying. What kind of gun violence, Mr. Bracy? School? That happens, yeah. Huh? Big political violence? Yeah. In this country? Yes. That's kind of dangerous. It's bad. I didn't think it got that way, Mr. Bracy.
We're gonna go down that road, man.
Why?
It's gonna be a long call. It's a long conversation.
It's a long course, sir. Violence in the news. Anything specific? Anyone watch the news at the end of the? Yes, Mr. Ruddle.
It's been like Charlie Kirk got shot at.
Who's that? What's going on?
Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, who's that?
He's a public speaker.
He's a public speaker. Okay, yeah, I think so. Who gave speeches in public, hence public speaker.
He does a lot of drawing blank, but he talks amongst groups of people and he debates about certain political views or certain problems involved in the United States government.
So he debates people about top. Do you know which on the spectrum where is he? Is he right or left or middle or?
I'm not sure exactly how. I think he's middle right. He is a
Middle
registered Republican.
Oh, okay, all right. Someone, Mr. Glitch.
You said he's like far right.
He's far right. Ooh, not even right. He's far right.
He's also conservative activist.
Okay. What does that mean to you? What's a conservative activist?
Meaning he speaks freely about what he believes towards his political work. He speaks freely about his political beliefs.
All right. Do you speak freely about baseball?
Yeah.
Which team do you like?
Phillies.
Huh?
Or Phillies.
Oh, yeah. I should have assumed. Yeah, Philly.
Phillies.
They're not doing that hot this year, are they? Are they doing well? Huh?
They're very good. Very good.
Oh, they are. Okay, sorry. I followed. So you talk about them with people. You guys talk about it amongst yourselves. A lot of Phillies are winning. So you're sports activists.
In a sense.
In a sense. Trying to promote sports. Pass it along. Promote it.
Yes. Highly encouraged.
Highly encouraged. Okay, interesting. Yes, that was what I was thinking. I mean, I think there was other violence in the news, but other things you bring up. That was political violence, but other people were fortunately killed who were in the news.
Shooting in Colorado.
Huh?
School shooting in Colorado.
Oh, there was?
Yeah.
Another one? What are you gonna do? What can you do? Okay. So this conservative activist was shot. Was he wounded or was he killed?
Killed.
Oh, okay, he died. He was. People die at school, or was that just they were just shot? Does anyone know?
And they're in like critical condition. I don't know if they died.
Huh?
So last time I looked, they were in critical condition.
Critical.
I don't know if they died or not.
All right. So may God help people in healing. If they do die, holy God, may they die in your peace. Does anyone know why the person was shooting up the school this time? It should be about that. Right? Be cruel to your school, right? Alice Cooper. Style. That's what we serve. I know you think. Be cruel to your school. But does anyone, I'm sorry, do you know why it was done? And they have a motive or anything? You didn't look into it? You got a computer in front of you, sir. You got fingers. You could if you wanted to. I'm curious what the motive might have been. Well, let me ask this. Was the motive religious? Was Charlie Kirk, because honestly, I never heard of Charlie Kirk before in my life, but I guess if you're in the conservative movement, he was a big influencer, right? My brother asked me if I had heard him, comes to my door, like, Sean, I'm working on my study. Did you know Charlie Kirk? Who? I didn't know. But it wasn't a religious reason, right? I don't think so. We don't know. They haven't caught the guy yet, right? So they have a suspect. Did you find out what about the Colorado shooting?
He died.
Huh?
He died.
Who?
Yeah,
The shooter where? Colorado? Oh, are you talking about the Catholic Church one? Or school?
School.
Oh, the school. Okay. But so the person's dead, but hopefully can figure. They always want to figure out a motive, but it's kind of after the fact. You know, it's like, what are you going to do if the guy's killed himself after doing it? I'm assuming it's a guy. It's usually a guy. 16. No overt religious reasons. Saw on the news some guy on a train killed some young woman. Came here from the Ukraine to find peace and quiet as a refugee and comes to America to get a knife in her neck.
What did you do that? Like, whoever stabbed the woman,
Yeah.
had like criminal history, like mental problem, like there was a train wreck.
Some mental issues. A lot of violence. A lot of violence, Mr. Lynch. Well, you throw things at people. Do you ever hit them? I mean, intentionally? Do you ever peg them if they get a dinger off you or something?
Yes.
Really? You make a conscious choice that I'm going to hurt this person. I'm going to hit them with this ball, and
It ain't been bad.
by hitting a home run off of you,
No, just get big balls.
like if they crowd the plate or something, and you have to back them off a little bit. Interesting. And yet, Ms. Jasmine, the course is still entitled Religion and Violence. What's the last news story? I'm just curious because this ties in. It does tie in. There's a method to my madness. What's the last news story you heard where a person killed someone, shot up someplace for religious motives. Just curious. What do you remember? Mr. Saunders.
There's probably a fourth signal, but fitting for today, no.
Ooh, or 11th. That was 24 years ago. That was a long time ago. I mean, it happened, right? Was it religious? I mean, was that even religiously motivated?
There was no religion,
All right.
just one of fun.
Okay. All right. Yes, Ms. Rogers.
I know a month ago there was a school shooting where the shooter had like religion verses on the guns,
Oh,
and they shot up like a Christian school, I believe. I don't know that fully their motive, but I know that it was like a children's school that they shot up. And there was also one that where first day there was a bunch of kids at an elementary school that went to church, and the shooter shot them there.
yeah, a mass shot through the window. But I'm not sure that, and on the other one I haven't heard about. So maybe if the person had religious verses like on the weapon, then maybe there was a religious motive. Maybe. The Catholic Church one, though, the person, I think they were not religious. Their motives were, I don't think their motives were religious. They chose a religious location, though, right? All right, so we got one out of political, maybe a political assassination. We don't know. They haven't caught the guy yet. Refugee woman just killed by a guy who's mentally ill. Someone shooting in a school, shooting at religious people, not the religious people trying to kill anybody. They're just, the kids were at mass. It's great. Interesting. Oh, I could add another one. Oh, maybe they reported down here in New York City. Maybe, well, they had it on the national news, I think. So they thought it was a guy who tortured an elderly couple, came in the back door and tortured them for a few hours, then killed them in their basement or something. That's another, God bless America, you know, it's like, they got all kinds, so it's all never a dull moment. And one that's religion, probably maybe motivated by religion. If we can find out why the person put those verses on the gun. So what's going on with religion? What's wrong with these people? Well, I just gave you like 3 or 4 examples of stuff that's politics, mental illness, criminal justice. We don't know, but doesn't seem to be religious. We got one of religious just from ourselves recently. And yet, as I said, this course is entitled Religion and Violence, Mr. Dobson. Something to think about. Religion, the sacred. This is from a Dictionary of Anthropology, Peter Metcalf, in the section on the sacred, and wrote this. Would anyone like to read this little snippet from the Dictionary of Anthropology regarding the sacred? Ms. Park. Excellent, Ms. Park. Thank you. Kamsahamnida. The sacred, a class of things, events, and beings that are different from the ordinary. They are unusual. They're not normal. Okay? You should know that by now. I hope I've hammered that point home. The sacred is not normal. So you don't treat it normally. Okay? It's different. And hence it needs to be separated from the normal world or the profane world, and that's what a lot of religions do. They're basically doing everything they're doing is to separate from the profane world. It's like their members, just their members. The things that they do, like dress a certain way, you know, cut their hair, shave their heads, or let their hair grow, wear a hat, don't wear a hat, a veil, don't wear a veil, you know, all sorts of different things that religions do. Just to their own members, again, you're separating the members from the normal everyday world. Well, you know this because you don't have to go very far to, you know, to stumble upon the Amish and stuff like that, the Mennonites in north, south, eastern Pennsylvania, parts of Ohio, and stuff like that. You know, why do they dress the way they do? Why are they driving buggies with horses? Why do they wear beards and cut their hair in a certain way? Why do Hasidic Jews dress like people did back in Lithuania in the 1600s? You know, the long black coats, or at least Jews dressed in Lithuania have long black coats, big black bushy or fur bushy hats and stuff like that. Why? It separates them, it identifies them. It makes them sacred in a way, separates them out from the normal everyday world. Okay, they're different. Okay. And yeah, a lot of the sacred is oftentimes linked to things that are unseen, another form of existence that we can't see. I got this. Oh, all right, well, we are. This is one of the first books I used. I was teaching I think it was maybe the first textbook I used. I was teaching a world religions class, Approaches to the Study of Religion. The book was a big snore, so I only used it once. I didn't want to read it. It put me to sleep. Like one of those books that's like all text and no pictures, nothing. Anyways, but nevertheless, I got this from, I'll read it because it's short. The crucial element to religion is this, the idea of the sacred. Okay, when we encounter the sacred, we have religion. When it's absent, we don't. The non-normal. Now, it's still kind of that's still kind of sticky because those of you who play sports know that that's not normal. I mean, it's also not normal activity as well. Sports can be unusual. You know, like why does it matter? Like you catch a fly ball in the infield and stuff like that. Or a person pops up in the infield and the person's automatically out, right? Even if no one catches the ball. Huh? Huh?
Only in certain situations.
Oh, only in certain, but why? Why not always? So there are some ways that things are not normal in other things that we do. But okay, if we have the sacred, then that's a good defining characteristic. The holy, okay, things that religions deal with things that are not typically normal to the world, to the physical world. So they're not science. They're not the hard sciences, stuff like that. Yes, as I told you before, I think I told you before, well, man, a lot of ancient cultures, they were great astronomers. They looked at the stars and the planets and they mapped them and, you know, watched their movements and stuff like that. So they had astronomical knowledge. They were able to visibly see some of the planets and identify them, even though they didn't know apparently what they were. And they weren't necessarily sure how the universe, or at least our solar system, worked. Mr. Gaines, Mr. Gaines. Anyways, but they had that knowledge, but it was sacred knowledge to them. These things were not normal to them. They had meaning to them. The way the stars don't move, the way the planets moved, and the way the Earth moved through the solar system. Those movements, the sun and the moon as well, they were not normal. I mean, they're normal, perfectly normal to us because we know how they work. We don't consider them gods or spirits. We haven't religified them. They're not religious anymore for us. But for them, they were. So they were not normal entities. They had meaning. So we still look at the stars and the planets and stuff like that, but we don't look at them in that way. They're not sacred anymore for us. So you remove the sacred, you normalize it, make it profane, and you have astronomy. You sacralize it, you make it sacred, you have astrology. Astrology. Which is basically an early form of astronomy. But anyways. At least it was then. Now it's, religion. How would I define it? This is, I guess this is the best I could do with it to come up with a definition of religion. I wish I could make it shorter. It might be a little bit too verbose. But religion, it's a concept. It is a concept, okay? It's an abstraction, but from something that really is observable and that we do observe. Just like, you hear music, Mr. Henry, yes? You hear music, you hear it, and then you talk about it. What is music? Theorize about music. But it's a reality for you. So is religion. Something observable, I think. But the word is a concept, definitely. That abstraction, that we're trying to describe this thing that we observe. Okay, a group of beliefs and practices, things that people say that they believe about the world, it's how it works, its meaningfulness, things they do based on these beliefs. Of course, dealing with human beings here, okay? Why do they, these beliefs and these practices, why do they believe these things and why do they do them? Because they want to interact with the sacred. That would be better definition. That's the way that human beings interact with the sacred, things that we believe about the sacred, what it is, but the way we want to have a relationship with the sacred. We want to also control it, make it sometimes do what we want it to do. That's magic, okay? Or we want it to be pleased with us and not hurt us, so we worship it or something like that. So, supernatural, things that are above the normal world, one might say, of spiritual beings and realities, that have an existence all their own. They have a transcendent existence over the natural, physical world, and they give ultimate meaning. These realities give ultimate meaning to everything. The sacred is understood to be the ultimate explanation of where the universe came from, why it exists, where we came from, what our purpose in it, all sorts of things like that. So yeah, it's longish. I have to go over it again and fine tune it a little bit. But yeah, basically, if I had to put it into a nutshell, how human beings interact with the sacred, which they believe to be ultimately meaningful for everything. However that's conceived. Oops, uh-oh. Yay! Wait a second. Oh, before I got to my... Hold on a second here. Got a whole bunch of things in my notes. I don't know if I want to go over them. Move on. Just got to be sure I don't ask you about them on the quiz. Oh, I do want to say that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to go back to that. Give me a second. We get to the next PowerPoint. What is religion? How is religion studied? A second here. There we go. So there are things I skipped over that are important. I want to hit these points because they're important about the sacred. When we talk about, I should have put them on the PowerPoint. Well, I'll have to remember that in the future. Anyways, encountering the sacred um, it usually evokes a mixed reaction when you encounter something that's sacred, both a positive and kind of a negative reaction. On the one hand, one thing that kind of unites religions and their human experience of the sacred, which is embodied in religion, is there's like an instinct to avoid it. Again, as I said, don't touch, don't eat, don't go there, okay? Things forbidden and taboo. They want you to avoid things. There's this idea of, you don't want to be, or don't be involved with the sacred. Leave it alone. It's dangerous. And yet, there's also an instinct of attraction to it. It's like you want to go away, move away from it, but you're still like looking at it. You don't want to take your eyes off of it. It's dangerous, but it's attractive in some way. So you got these two things going on, You want to kind of get to it, but you also don't, it's dangerous and can hurt you. So religion is a way of controlling the sacred and allowing people to have that interaction. Because religion gives you the tools and the rituals that if you do them properly, you can communicate with the God. Then the God will speak to you. If you say the right mantra or opening prayers or make the right sacrifice, then the God will deign to acknowledge you and say something or give you a sign or some message. But you have to be careful, because if you screw it up, then the God might hurt you and punish you. Okay? If you do the wrong thing. So usually you have professionals that they call shamans, people who know the right things to do, because you don't want to screw it up, because when you're interacting with the sacred, it's dangerous. But it's also useful. It's powerful. So the sacred needs to be controlled, and religion gives us that control, which we call religion. Could call religion as well. It's the control, our means of controlling the sacred, so we don't make the gods angry. All right, well, that's what I want to say. Something else I want to say on my mind. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I won't go into that. Religion. How do we study religion? How is religion studied, or what is religious studies? Oh, I'm glad you asked. I know his son is like, I didn't ask nothing, but he's gonna plow on anyways. Well, I got like 3 months to fill, sir, so gotta say something. How is religion? How is this control of the sacred studied? And I guess that's why I took the definition from a dictionary in anthropology, because that's how anthropologists are looking at religion. When it's a human artifact, it's a part of human culture and society of dealing with the sacred or the non-normal. If there is such a thing as religion, which I think there is, something observable, then it would stand to reason that it could be evaluated and studied like any other human phenomenon. Okay, we're not looking at questions of truth or falsity. I am a Christian, for example, and I can study my religion from certainly a faith perspective, but there's nothing wrong with studying Christianity purely from a religious studies perspective, just like any other human phenomenon, because it is any other human phenomenon. So you can use the tools of anthropology or sociology or economics or whatever to study the Catholic Church or Catholic belief or demographics or whatever, and people do. Doesn't mean the beliefs are right or they're false, I think yes, it is, and yes, it can. So I think that Jonathan Z. Smith is wrong. May he rest in peace, and certainly a much better scholar than I. But I do think my personal view is there is data for religion. Otherwise, there'd be nothing to study. But we're studying something. And that's what religious studies is, study of religion. It's an academic field where people study in a descriptive, non-judgmental way religious beliefs and practices. Okay? The same as like anthropologists or sociologists, they're basically describing what they see. This is what they're not making a judgment on it. Even if the action you might think is horrific, like genital mutilation. Okay, well, we call it genital mutilation, but if you're in a culture that does that, especially to girls, where they cut apart parts of the vagina, they call it circumcision, female circumcision. It's normal to them as part of their culture. But in the West, there's this horror about it, and they call it genital mutilation. But, it happens to girls, but it happens to boys as well. Like when I was in Papua New Guinea for 9 months in Papua New Guinean culture, some of them, not all of them, there is circumcision. You probably know about circumcision from Jews, right? Where you cut the foreskin around the penis, and remove it. But there's also, what is it called? Circumcision in some cultures, where they cut down the penis, the urethra, from the glands, which is that fleshy part at the top. They cut down and kind of fillet it open like if you when you cut open a hot dog and you're on the grills. That's we reason over why they do this. One of the theories is that it makes the penis look like the vagina in a way, like when it's flayed, it looks a woman. Huh? They think that's why it's done, but probably I would imagine people do it just because that's what the culture tells them. At a certain point, a certain age, you do that to a boy. So to us, we might be like, I'm just going to say, I wouldn't like it to be done to me. I wouldn't, if I had children, which I don't, I wouldn't do it to them. But if I were a religious studies scholar studying this, I would make an effort to, you have to bracket out my culture, my even religious beliefs about the practice, and just describe, and I'm not judging. I'm trying to understand why, if there's a religious motive for this, why they're doing it to this child or this person, or why this person is allowing it to be done. Doesn't mean I agree with it. I don't have to be a Satanist to want to study the Church of Satan or Satanism or whatever. It just might fascinate me. I'm curious why people do, want to worship the devil, however they conceive the devil, as some kind of entity, real entity, or just a symbol of human progress and human mastery over the world. Not all, there's atheistic Satanism and theistic Satanism. Doesn't mean I agree with it, accept the beliefs, approve of the practices, but I can describe them and try to explain, well, this is, I think, why religiously they do this. So it's descriptive and non-judgmental. It's academic, that's what academia is trying to do. It's not trying to necessarily convert you to a certain point of view. I give you my opinions from time to time, but they're just my opinions. If you agree with me or disagree, it's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. Okay? You can agree with me or disagree with me. But, I throw out my opinions every now and then just to give a little spice, Stir the pot a little bit, Mr. Dobson, Maybe get someone talking. Yeah, that really works, this part, right? Yeah. but I don't expect you to agree or disagree. I'm an academic, or I'm giving you the ideas of what I think religion is. You might think my definition of religion or what I've been describing was too long-winded, or you might think that no, after hearing all of my arguments for saying that there is such a thing that we can qualify as religion, that ultimately, no, my arguments don't make sense to you. You don't accept it? Fine. That's fine. We can debate and discuss it. That's what academics do. I don't torch you or flame you because I don't agree with you. At least I shouldn't. It shouldn't happen, but who knows what's going on in. What we say, we just had a shooting on a college campus. Yes, I don't like your views. Boom. Okay. So the academic study of religion, it doesn't mean it's neutral, okay, or objective. Because as anyone will tell you nowadays in the postmodern or post-postmodern era, there is no such thing as objectivity in anything, even the hard sciences. There's no neutrality. You're always coming from your context. You're always oriented from where you're coming from. You know? All right, fine. But we can try to be as objective as possible and sympathetic, as maybe it's a better word. To try what would motivate these people to do this thing? Something that maybe viscerally I totally disagree with, but what would motivate them to do it and try to get into their mind? Okay. But anyways, the academic study of religion has been around since the 1800s, last couple hundred years. It arose in Europe, Western Europe, and in America, the Americas, largely in a Christian context. The early scholars of religion were from a Christian and Western background. Most people agree that this gentleman, Friedrich Max Mueller, or is usually just called Max Mueller, picture of him later in life, is the father of religious studies. You can see when he lived in the 1800s. The father of religious studies. Doesn't mean he was the first person to ever theorize about religion or study religion, but he made it into a field, a specific area of study, not just a piece of everything else. I mean, he was a German, of German ethnicity. His main, his specialty was languages. He was a linguist. He was a scholar of languages. And he moved from the continent to Britain, to Great Britain, to England, thanks be to God. So he had to speak English. We'll find out why in a moment, but why I'm appreciative of that. But anyways, he emigrated and he taught at Oxford University. And his study of language really kind of motivated him or pushed him into the study of religion, because religions have a lot of religious texts. And he wanted to translate them into English. Or he did translate them into English, thanks be to God. And by studying language, he was able to see connections between the religions and stuff like that. So he became a pioneer in comparing what's called the comparative study of religion, comparing, Christianity to Hinduism, to Islam, to their beliefs and their religious texts to each other. I don't think that's in fashion anymore with religious studies scholars. They like to say that, each religion is incommensurable, meaning it's unable to be really equated with any other religion. So usually, you don't really do comparative religious studies anymore, but he did it. And so that's why he's called the father, also the father of comparative religion, but also religious studies. And he translated, get to that in a moment. He wrote about the topic of religion, and here are some of his major works: An Essay on Comparative Mythology, Introduction to the Science of Religion, the knowledge of religion, study of religion, and then the Gifford Lectures. These are, I believe, given in Scotland. They still give them today. Some important thinker gives a series of lectures up in Scotland. I forget what they're called, the Gifford Lectures. I don't know if that's the name of the person who started them or the name of the school. I have to look it up. Anyways, someone wants to look it up for me, I'll give you an extra credit. Anyways, the Gifford Lectures from 1888 to 92, which were then published, usually, yeah, the Gifford Lectures, a person's Gifford Lectures, which could be on anything, not just religion or anything, it could be on anything. But usually, a lot of times the lectures are published. His lectures on the nature of religion and stuff like that. But his major claim to fame, his ideas about what religion was and stuff, nobody really accepts anymore. They're totally outdated. So religious studies scholars are not Mullerians, I guess we could say, in their views on religion. His ideas are kind of passé. But so, his books on religion aren't really, that important. What is important is this multi-volume series called The Sacred Books of the East, in which he and others translated a whole bunch of texts from India, Southeast Asia, China, into English. And they're all in the public domain. So if you go on this website, for example, Sacred Text Archive, but also you can find copies on Internet Archive, PDF copies, scans. I've got them on my computer. And it's still a wonderful resource. It was written in the 1800s, a lot of it. So the English, the translation is kind of stilted and old. You might need a dictionary to figure out what some words mean. But it's still, in some cases, the only English translations we have of some of these sacred texts. They might now be in the process of translating them into modern English, but for the longest time, this was it, and in some ways it still is it. If you want to read some obscure text from the Pali Canon of Buddhism or something, or Shintoism. So it's still a crucial source, still important. As a linguist, as you might imagine, for Mueller, the study of language was paramount for him. That's what led him to the study of mythology, sacred stories, and the science of religion. And, his view was that religion was a state a state of the mind, by which the infinite was apprehended or perceived under different names, different words. It's different words for the same God or the same thing. The infinite, the eternal, the thing, the reality without end, transcendent, whatever you want to call it, ultimate reality. And we just describe it differently. We use different words. And for him, he theorized that what happened was that the words that were used to describe the god or thing that was worshipped then became the name and even the thing itself. And so the study of religion is kind of the study of language. There's some truth to that. There's some truth to the fact that, the name, certain names for gods might be related to, what was their special sauce or something, or what people attributed or connected them with. Okay. So, for example, the name Zeus, the god Zeus. I mean, really his name, he's the king of the gods, but Zeus is related to the Greek word theos, which means God. So his name is like God right there. So kind of the word becomes even his name. Okay. In Hinduism, you have the god Shiva. It's a male god. Shiva the destroyer. And sometimes he's called Shiva Rudra. Well, Rudra was the name for an ancient storm god. And Rudra was the word that was used to kind of describe the thunder that you hear when there's a storm. Rudra, it's almost onomatopoeic. Rudra, Rudra, from the thunder. And that became the name of the storm god. And then it became attached later to Shiva, who kind of absorbed the storm god into his story. We call him Shiva Rudra. So there, okay. So, there was some evidence for what Mueller was saying, but most religious studies scholars would not follow this line of thinking that, the rise of religion is more complex than people just taking words that they're using to describe the sacred, which then somehow become the actual thing itself, or the sacred itself. It's more than just words applied. But, again, he argued for, I mean, even though his views are largely forgotten or not accepted among scholars, and that happens a lot in the history of, I mean, any of you doing the mental sciences, like the health sciences, you know, social work, and you have to do a little bit of, you know, investigation into the history of psychology and something like, or your field. You know, you'll learn about certain people who had, oh yeah, so Freud had this idea and Adler had that idea, blah 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 blah. But we don't believe in that anymore. We think we know something else. Okay, but they're stepping stones. And you know, even though his ideas are not followed or forgotten, he did lay the foundation for the idea, at least, of examining religion in a systematic way, the science of religion. You know, systematically through language study or archaeology, through history, and not just accepting it on as a faith. You know, it's not a theology, which is what theology is. You know, you might also study things with language and history and theology, but you're a believer. You're assuming these things are true or that they have real meaningfulness. Religious studies scholar might be a believer too, but doesn't bring that belief to the study or to the tools. Okay. The Enlightenment influences on religious studies. Well, just about everything today was influenced by what was called the Enlightenment. The bringing of light, of clarity to the human mind, as if the human mind was in darkness, Mr. Gaines, up until this point in the 17th century. Yes, scholars usually date the Enlightenment from 1650 until the 1800s. Now, if you're like me, you realize we've entered another dark age. Who knows how long it will last? But the Enlightenment, and everything's been influenced by the Enlightenment. You know, this is where we start to see modern science, what we call modernity, but science and politics, warfare, everything that we call modernity. Modernity. And the study of religion is no different. The beginnings of the Enlightenment started in England with a man named Thomas Hobbes. I have his picture here. There he is. Okay, so you can see it started even before the 1600s because he was in the late 1500s. But Thomas Hobbes, an Englishman, and then it kind of jumped from England to France with people like René Descartes. And it was very heavily influenced by this philosopher, Immanuel Kant. Dr. Cluis, does anyone know Dr. Cluis? Has anyone taken any philosophy courses with Dr. Cluis? Has anyone taken any philosophy courses? No? Not yet? But you have to, right? One or two? No, you don't have to take one. I thought it was still part of the requirements, at least like one philosophy.
English.
Really? That's all you have to take?
Yeah.
Required? One English course, one history
I
course?
think it's like each semester.
Each semester, okay. Well, in the philosophy and religious studies department, if you knew this man, Dr. Cluis, which I don't, I think I met him once. But he's a Kantian. His expertise is in this German gentleman, German ethnicity. He's Prussian, I think Prussian. Immanuel Kant, whose philosophy was very influential in, no pun intended, in this period of the Enlightenment. Okay, so what happened with the Enlightenment? Well, there was a cultural shift in Europe towards a reliance on two things: actual experience and reason, thinking for oneself. Okay? So actual empiricism, you might say, and rationalism. All right? That you've actually experienced something, you're not a tradition, relying on the witness of past authorities, whether it was the church, the Bible, or Aristotle, or Galen for medicine. Who's the other guy? Hippocrates and Galen for medicine, Aristotle for physics and astronomy and psychology. We don't rely on these people anymore, okay? We don't need, we want to actually experience things for ourselves, not what people tell us they should be. So, there might be theories about, I don't know, fire or the planets or stuff like that. But you want to experiment. You want to see for yourself, basically. Okay? People start dropping things from windows to the ground because they want to see, will a heavier thing fall at the same rate of speed as a lighter thing? Okay? They didn't know about gravity and stuff like that. I mean, they knew about gravity, but they didn't know it in the modern sense. But that empiricism, human experience, you yourself had to do it. Say, I saw it. Okay, yeah, the cannonball, and I threw out a cannonball, and I threw out a book or something, and yeah, they both seemed to hit the ground at the same time. Isn't that weird? Why? Now you think, why is that if one's heavier than the other? You think about it. You don't flip open your Bible and say, well, can I find a verse that explains why a heavier thing and a lighter thing would seem to fall at the same rate of speed as long as there's no impediment or something? No, you don't. That's tradition. That's someone, you don't, God will tell me. You're not looking for divine revelation. You're thinking for yourself. You don't look to the church for the answer. You look to your own reason. So experience and reason, not tradition or revelation. And all the Enlightenment thinkers agreed on that thing, that reason, to use your unaided reason. You didn't appeal to a religious text or a sacred text. You didn't appeal to previous tradition. Well, this is what the ancients thought it was, because the ancients could be wrong. You tested it yourself. You thought about it yourself. And that was your ultimate authority, was your own unaided reason. So, as you can imagine, religion is based on reason as well. Reason and faith, also evidence. People want evidence to believe. So people like miracles and stuff like that, It helps with the belief process because it's evidence. It might not be good evidence, might not be evidence that you might accept, but human beings at our root, we are empiricists. We want to see things for ourselves and not just be told about them. But with a lot of religions, you have to believe that certain things happened or are possible just because you believe them. You have to believe them in order to believe the other things that follow. So for, a man to rise from the dead, you have to assume there's an afterlife of some kind. Maybe. You don't necessarily have to have an afterlife because it could just be a resuscitation, but that's usually involved. The person has come back from the underworld. So one belief follows on the other. So, religion very quickly becomes an object of attack by the Enlightenment scholars. They were a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them were very hostile towards religion, especially Christianity and Judaism. Because, you're appealing to a revelation. Well, I can't explain this, so it must be God, or I don't know where the world came from, but if I read the first couple chapters of the Bible, it tells me how the world was created, so there it is. It's like right there. Except for the dinosaurs, Miss Rogers. Where did the dinosaurs go?
You repeat that, my hearing aid went out.
You're hearing me, but I said, where did the dinosaurs go in the Bible? Genesis 1, Genesis 2, chapters 1 and 2. No dinosaurs, Mr. Saunders. Where are my dinosaurs? Doesn't God know? Well, they didn't know, actually, at this period of time. They hadn't dug up dinosaurs yet, not that we know of. But yeah, people even today want to go to the Bible for their science. Then they take, try creation science. They try to cram all the data that we have from modern science and try to cram it into the first two chapters of a religious text to make it work. And for some people it works, and for a lot of people it doesn't, I think. But that's the opposite of what the Enlightenment thinkers want. That's why they're so hostile. Religion just, you believe it. So it was kind of anti-questioning. You just appeal to the sacred text, and that ends the argument. If God and the Bible says that this is how the world was created, that's simply how it was. Well, once modern science comes and people start, building telescopes and looking up at the stars and theorizing and stuff like that, and looking at the world and the evidence that the world provides, they're like, well, some of these things in the sacred text, and not just the Bible, but you can look at the Vedas of Hinduism and stuff like that, or the Quran of Islam, which says that human beings were made from a clot of blood of some kind, or a clot of some kind. And like, well, we don't think so. The evidence seems to suggest this. Our experience seems to tell us this. And our reasoning seems to agree with the experience. In a way that's kind of get the word I'm looking for. So yeah, there was a bit of a touch, well, probably more than a touch of anti-religious sentiment in the Enlightenment. But more than anti-religion, it was an emphasis on the power of human experience and reason. Okay? And this is where like the modern science and the natural sciences, studying the natural world, became very there's a very high-placed emphasis on the natural sciences and the results. Okay, what you could know through experimentation, through your own experience, and stuff like that. And people saw the results. They could see them. You could have a microscope and you could see the little creatures swimming around in a drop of water, Oh, still that wasn't good enough for people. It was a Leeuwenhoek. I forget his first name, a Dutchman. I think he was a Dutchman. Invented the first microscope. People didn't believe him when he said what he was seeing. He took a little, pond water and put it on his look, and he sees, paramecia and amoebae and all sorts of single-celled organisms, and he even drew pictures of what he was seeing, and people wouldn't believe him. They couldn't believe that this was, because look at it. If you look at a drop of water, do you see these things swimming around? They were empiricists too. They were using their eyes, and then they were using their reason. Now incorrectly, of course, because they're thinking if I don't see it, then it mustn't be there. They couldn't conceive that things could be so small that their eyes could not see them. But then it's like, okay, let me use this contraption, Leeuwenhoek, this microscope thingy. And they looked, they're like, wait, dang, Leeuwenhoek is right. These things are there. What else is out there, So everyone and his brother and sister wanted a microscope. Everyone wanted to be like a science because they could start seeing the benefits of it. Modern medicine at that time was not great. Okay, they were still using leeches and bleeding people. They thought that that we were a combination of humors, and if you had one humor out of balance with the other, too much phlegm or too much bile, then it will cause your illnesses. So if you bleed the person with leeches or bleed them outright, even though you're really killing the patient, but you're getting the bad blood out, the bile or the phlegm. Wasn't great, but, you know, at least it was kind of based on observation. At least it was going in that direction. Okay. People were, you know, starting to experiment, cut open people's bodies, see how the circulatory system worked. Start recognizing that no, there's blood. Well, they also the lymph, but don't seem to be these humors, you know, kind of like the ocean, kind of like waves, kind of like flowing through us and stuff. No, there's a system circulating the blood from the heart. The heart is like a machine. Oh, okay. So you can only know that from experience by cutting open bodies and looking. And you could see how the system also breaks if you know the system. If you know the system, you can also repair the system. So yeah, it wasn't great medical science, but it was getting better and better as people were not just assuming someone's word on how the body works, as people had assumed for a long, long time, trying to actually see for themselves how the body worked. So people could see very, very quickly the results of the natural sciences and their benefits and the discoveries that people could make that religion couldn't. You know, religion, that's not within the purview of religion. You know, that's not what religions are about, really. They don't explain medical science or geology or stuff like that. So they couldn't, since religions couldn't really do that job or not do it as well, couldn't explain the working of the world as well as, say, other scientists were. Well, what do you need religion for? And so everything wants to be scientific, especially when we get to the 1800s. So even the study of religion has to be scientific. And scientific is fine. Scientific just means a form of knowledge. The word scientia in Latin, scientia simply means knowledge. Okay, and I'm all in favor of knowledge. Knowledge is a good thing. Okay, scientia from scio, Latin, which means to know something. Just a form of knowledge, you know, and we see that usage in colleges and universities, because you have the College of Arts and Sciences, okay, which includes stuff like philosophy and literature and history, things that really aren't scientific at all. They're more arts, they're more interpretive. Okay, but they're not like biology or chemistry, you know? I mean, how do you prove the Civil War, you know? Or how do you do a lab experiment on the Holocaust or whatever, some other historical event, you know? How do you do that? You can't, you know? As a philosopher, if you're talking about truth, how do you run a lab experiment on truth? What truth is? Now, if you're a psychologist, you could run a lab experiment about how people perceive truth and what they think truth is, and how you could put stuff on their head to see how the brain reacts when they say a statement is true or they think it's false. You can do that. But I'm a philosopher talking about the nature of truth and its ultimate value. I mean, what do you do with that in a laboratory? What experiment can I do? So it's an art. It's not a science, but it is a science because it's knowledge. So we're using it in that broader sense in our school system. We still use it in that older sense. But in the modern times, because of, I lost you. It's all right, Mr. Bracy. It's all right. You and me, Mr. Bracy, we'll make it. But because this modern science, modern knowledge was so productive in all the results that people were coming up with and the experimentation, all that, you know, that kind of took over the word science and gobbled everything up, excluded everything else, any other meaning, okay? It just means knowledge, okay? Because they thought that this was the only true knowledge. And we had the like during COVID, everyone was saying, follow the science. Are you against the science? Does it? Do you believe Jesus is your Lord and Savior? Yes or no? Do you believe in the science? So it was like almost a religious thing, you know? Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm into science. I'm pro science. Okay, we're good then. What if I said no? I don't believe the science. Well, you are out of the club, troglodyte. So everyone wants to be like the natural sciences because they see the results. And if any of you, whatever you're doing, taking sociology classes, or you're taking health sciences, or you're taking whatchamacallit, education, okay, teaching, stuff like that, and you go through the history of your field, you will find most times that really the modern version of it starts in the 1800s by imitating the natural sciences. Everyone wants to be a science itself because that will give it legitimacy. That'll give it legitimacy. So you take over the strategies and the assumptions of the natural sciences and you apply them to all sorts of things. So anthropology is the science of the study of the human being. And sociology and psychology. And so, which are not really sciences, they're more arts, but you use all sorts of things like in psychology, psychometrics, and, you know, have all questionnaire, you give people questionnaires and tests and all sorts of stuff. And then you have to extrapolate what that data means. You still have to interpret it, whereas a chemist doesn't have to interpret if TNT is going to blow up, if he sets it aflame. You know, if a chemist, you know, is in the lab and say, oh, what happens if I do this? Don't. He knows every time it's going to blow up. There's no interpretation needed. But a sociologist, a psychologist, an anthropologist, they have data and they got to pore over it and they have to make sense out of it. It's more of an art than a science. But they want to be scientific. Okay? Like the natural sciences. So they, you know, you learn, any of you doing like the health sciences or you're doing psychology or social work, you're going to have to take like a course in statistics because statistics is a big thing for sociologists or for, you know, social, for psychology and stuff like that. Anthropologists, you're going to have to study languages and archaeology and stuff like that. Okay? Biology as well, evolutionary theory. And in the case of religion wanted to be science. That's what Mueller was aiming for. Could there be a scientific study of religion? Could we scientifically test religion, religious beliefs, see where they come from, see how they work? Yes, I got you. Okay, I'll end here and see you next week. God bless you all.
Were you being serious?
Huh? Was I being serious?